This is a message to all my supporters of this podcast. I'm introducing a new supporters program. You can contribute a small amount as a one-off payment to show your love for this podcast. Thank you in advance for all your contributions. Hi, my name's Mark Hayward, the Absolute Mindset podcast. It's created and hosted by Mark Hayward. I'm a corporate employee with an entrepreneurial mindset. This podcast will help and support you with new ideas about business. These are my thoughts, ideas, and comments. Today we have an interview with Manuj Aggarwal, and really looking forward to getting to the detail of his career. So Manuj, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, I'm excited to be a part of this.
Excellent. So we're going to talk about your career and your past and your future. I think there's some really interesting stories that I'm hoping are going to come out of this interview. Let's go all the way back to the start then. Let's go back to your education. So tell me a little bit about how you were educated and your experiences about that.
Yeah, education. It was an interesting journey. I was a pretty bright student in my school days. Straight A's and all that. But I lacked a lot of resources, a lot of sort of support in terms of getting higher education. And due to that, I had to sort of start working very early to support my passion for education. So I was working in a factory, trying to support myself and acquiring the education that I could afford, which was not the best education I could afford, but it was good enough to give me the basics that I needed to understand. So that's how I started, working 12 hours in a factory and then devoting the rest of the time to get my bachelor's degree first and then the master's degree in IT.
And do you think that sort of background, that sort of way you grew up made you more determined to be successful?
Yes, for sure. Any challenge that we face is what makes us drive towards success. So that challenge was actually very motivating, and the more challenging the life got, the more determination I got to make something out of this life and leave behind the misfortunes that I had earlier on.
And so you moved to Canada.
Yes,
what was the background of the moving to Canada? I know you've got a story about your wife as well. So how did you get to Canada and what did you start doing when you first moved to Canada?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, I fell in love with computers when back in 95, 96, I was, spending a lot of time programming and trying to learn how to sort of, be creative and come up with cool solutions. And during that time frame, I joined a computer programming course where I met my future wife. And, she was charming enough, but she was kind of, I guess, this will get me in trouble, but I'll be honest, she was kind of lazy and did not want to complete her assignment. So she enlisted me to complete her assignments, and I was, I was glad to do that for her. Yeah. And and one thing led to another, and then we got married in India and decided to move to Canada and try our luck there to build a life.
So your early part of your career was basically as a coder, as a software engineer. What was it? Just a passion of computers from an early age, or did you grow into it, or were you did you think it was very like a good career path to go through? What sort of inspired you into coding?
Yeah, computers were, as I said, I did not have a lot of resources. So computers, being a very expensive item, it was a thing of luxury for me. I think the first time I lay my hands on a computer was when I was in 12th grade. They introduced some computing courses in my school. And I did not get, the whole, I did not realize the potential of the computer, the whole computing technology until about 3 or 4 years down the road. When I started thinking about, when I started learning that you can actually program things, and then you can feed it to the computer, and then computer will just basically do what you ask it to do. I was just sort of, using computers for playing games and things like that, which was quite, interesting. But the power that you get by actually making the computer do what you want it to do, that was really mind-blowing. So around, I will say 95 or 96, I really got into computers. And at that time, computers were being implemented in most business domains, and the use cases for computers were just sort of catching up, and the internet was being introduced at that time. So everything was coming together, and that's what sort of led me, it made me more passionate about computers, and I just knew this is what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
And so the sort of IT, sort of technology, computers. I've spoken to a couple of people in my recent interviews about how things have changed from the mid to late 90s to how we are now. And a lot of the feedback people have given me is that speed, capacity are one of the main differences. What would you say is the biggest difference, or some of the differences from mid 90s to where we are now in 2019?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, it has become faster, bigger, better in many ways, but we are still going through an evolution. The field of computing is very young. So now if you compare field of computing with other traditional industries like construction or automotive or oil and gas, they've had their lifetime have been in centuries, right? 2 centuries, 3 centuries. And the kind of innovation they've had, you can just imagine the IT industry or computing industry started in, say, 1960s, 1970s, but really caught on around 1980s. So really, we've had only a few decades of progress. Mm-hmm. And even today, yes, we have high-speed bandwidth connections in our homes. We have large compute capacities in cloud systems. But yet today, we still think about, how do we get our data into the hands of a mobile user who's in a remote area, or, how we try to optimize the data feed so that even on low bandwidth connections, you can feed the right experience to the user. So these are the problems that we still think about. Now imagine, in a transportation industry, we were talking about, how do I get my vehicle, a four-wheeler vehicle into a remote area. Those are some limitations that should go away in the next few decades. So to answer your question, yes, we have made a lot of progress, but we have quite a few, quite a bit of more progress to be made. And within 50 years, I don't think we'll have any issues. We won't even talk about, how fast the internet connection is. It's just going to be like, okay, you open your device and all the data that you need will be available. So, these type of things will be a thing of past, basically.
So if you could look into the future, you say like speeds and things like that will just be, you'll just be able to get your data as quickly as you can. What do you see? Do you ever like read or think about that sort of future proofing of computer science or technology? Do you see where, because I'm going to talk a little bit about blockchain a little bit later on, but do you see any other, so artificial intelligence is obviously something that is very hot at the moment, blockchain and block is very big at the moment. Is there any other things that you see maybe in the next 10 or 12 years that are going to be game changers?
Yeah. I think we are we are in an interesting time right now. There are a few technologies that you just mentioned. They are coming together at the same time. It doesn't happen that, some groundbreaking technologies come together at the same time in most industries, like in our industry as well. So, first came the mainframes, then came personal computers, then came the internet. And now in this, today we're in 2019, machine learning, cloud computing, blockchain, all these are coming together. So, if I knew what future technologies will be more prevalent in 10 years, I will be like, I think I'll be there right now. But that being said, these technologies that are being used today, they have a huge potential of changing the way we live, the way we work. In fact, as you have heard, machine learning and artificial intelligence is getting up to a point where they can do and think better than humans, right? So you can think like, as we achieve general artificial intelligence, meaning not artificial intelligence for specific tasks, but general artificial intelligence which can compete with human brain and can figure out optimal solutions in any situation. That will basically change how we live, because we will no longer need our brain power to do certain things. So, as a society, we'll have to find new ways to occupy our brains, our time, and hopefully invest our time into more productive and peaceful purposes. So, that's going to be an exciting future, basically.
Do you see AI as as the doomsday, or do you see? Are you more optimistic about AI and machine learning?
We'll be back after a quick break.
Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
I don't think it's going to be doomsday. Like as humans, we tend to be pessimistic, and we always look at the bad, especially in the media. They want to sensationalize everything. So again, look back in history. When weaponry was invented, when automotives were invented, all these disruptive technologies, when they were invented in those times, people were not very open to them, right? Yeah. Even the idea when Galileo invented telescope, he was executed basically. So all these technologies, when they are emerging, we always tend to be a little bit scared of them. But as they start to be adopted and we start to see the benefits, I think those fears they basically just vanish over time. That being said, they have the potential. These technologies have the potential to be used for wrongful purposes, and I'm sure some of the applications will be for destruction, for war and things like that. But I think overall, I'm very optimistic in our human race's potential to use anything for common good.
Right. It's one of the favorite quotes I've got from Henry Ford is like, if he asked people what did they want, they'd ask for a faster horse rather than a car.
Exactly.
So I totally get that the general population might be a little bit fearful because people have grown up with films like Terminator and all things like that for when it comes to AI. But AI, I think, is genuinely groundbreaking, and I think it, as you say, it will impact our lives. They're even coming into mobile phones very, very quickly and easily, and the sort of once that starts to be more widely used and seeing the benefit of it, I definitely think I think AI and machine learning is one of the most exciting areas of technology at the moment, and I think there's a lot of potential, untapped potential, which we're only really scratching the surface of.
Yeah, I completely agree with you.
Okay, so moving on. So you moved from an engineer, so a software engineer, to a software architect career. Just talk me through that, the sort of the characteristics of the difference between a developer and an architect.
All right. So A developer, and again, I'll use some analogies to explain the difference. I don't want to, I don't want to demean anybody, but basically developers are the frontline engineers who actually execute on the vision of the project and making sure we deliver the product that we are building, and writing code, testing the code, making sure it is all put together and it's deployed to the server and it's all working. The architect can, basically their job is to stand back and look at what is being built and make sure that we build the technology not only for today, but also accommodate the changes that will be coming down the pipe in the future. Because all technology basically is built to serve the business. And as we know, business is always dynamic, it changes, and we have to accommodate for those changes. So just another analogy could be, when we start to build a building, if you don't have a good architectural plan, the building may not last for a long time. And not only that, if we need to add or make any modifications to that building, it's going to be quite a challenge, because the foundational pieces of those buildings will not be able to accommodate those changes. So if we come up with a good architectural plan, we can put a strong foundation in. And the same thing can be said about software and IT, that we can put a strong foundation in, and we can make sure that the software that we are building, it lasts longer. Not only that, the architect also works with the business folks, and then he or she asks them, okay, how much time do you have to build this? How many resources do you have to invest in this solution? So if they have a very limited number of days in terms of when they want to go to the market, or they don't have the funds to build a very large team, a very senior team, the architectural patterns used will be a little bit different, even though the solution may not be very robust or last very long, because it's built with very quick and dirty sort of pattern. But if it's a solution to be built for decades, or it's a mission critical system, then the architectural patterns used will be quite different.
Yeah, so something I've experienced, because I work with developers and architects and testers, etc. in my day job. One of the things distinguishing factors between a developer and an architect for me is an architect has a business perspective on the product, the service, whatever you're building, where a software engineer doesn't have to. Some do, exactly. and the best probably do have that nice balance between the two. But a lot of software developers are not interested in the business side. So would you say that's one of the main differences?
Yes. That's right. So having that knowledge about the business is very important for the architect to come up with the right architecture for that situation. So and you're absolutely right. Most developers do not have any interest in understanding the business, which I highly discourage. I actually encourage all my team members to take interest in the business side of things. And the other thing is the career path for software architect is through software development, and when they move up into the hierarchy, become a software architect. And only the developers who take interest in understanding the business can expect to go to that level, right?
Right. So just a slightly different tilt on this our sort of conversation so far. So you've changed from an engineer to an architect to a CTO. That's sort of a very simplistic view of your sort of career trajectory. But personally, as a developer, having that personal development in your career, how did you make those changes? Was it a lot of external study? Was it a lot of learning on the job? Did you get taught by mentors? How did you move your career forward to a CTO?
So one thing is curiosity drives. So curiosity is number one, meaning, I'm always trying to understand, okay, I'm doing this job, but what is the next person in the hierarchy expecting of me? How do they do their job? What are their success factors? And I try to learn from them. I try to get mentorship from them. And try to understand how I can better myself and take my career from one level to the next. And along with that curiosity, once you gain that understanding, comes the drive and action to implement those things, learn those things. So earlier on in my career, I used to spend insane amount of time just trying to read, trying to put things together, break them apart, trying to put them back together.
Yeah.
And then those were sort of more on the execution side, on the technical side. But then as I started rising in the career, I started learning more about management, more about how to lead people, how to people get their buy-in, how to work with executives, and what are their priorities, what do they care about? Because in most cases, as you know, executives do not care about the nitty-gritty execution detail, but they care about the higher big picture. And how do you communicate with them? Communication is another important skill that I had to put a lot of emphasis on. So all these things combined, basically curiosity and drive and action are the three main things that can sort of, if one follows those, implements those three things, then the rest of the details, they automatically sort of, either you can figure it out or you can find mentors who can help you get there.
Yeah, and so one of the things I talk about on my podcast is being open to opportunities. I think a lot of people aren't, and they get content or happy on their sort of career path and they just stop. I think it's a similar thing to your sort of using curiosity. I think it's just being open and available to be able to see those opportunities and then action them, because a lot of people get those opportunities but they don't necessarily action them. So that's great. That's fantastic. As a personal development, I think that is something that everyone who wants to further their career should be curious.
Exactly. You should not really put any boundaries around. You should not really. That's one thing you have to train your mind to not put any boundaries around you. And you should not say, I can only go as far in life. Everybody can basically, everybody can become whatever they want. And that's really true. And I've found that to be really true in my own career as well.
And do you, so one of the things, another thing I talk about on my podcast is about setting goals. And so the idea of short-term, medium-term, long-term, as in 30 years sort of goals. Do you set goals yearly, or is your career now at the point that it's more of a vision that you're creating at the moment?
Earlier on, I did not, I was not very organized in terms of setting goals. Even though, as you put it, you use the very good word, vision. I had a vision of where I wanted to be, and and I even though it was very kind of foggy, it was not very structured. I did not know where it's going to take me, but I just knew, if I keep doing this, it'll lead to something wonderful. But now I have, more structured goals. I have more structured timelines, and I work towards them. And it's part of the learning that happens over time. Once you have nailed down the technology, you have figured out how to manage people, then it comes to this kind of higher level thinking of how to set goals, how to accomplish them, how to work towards them in step-by-step manner.
Okay, awesome. We're going to come back to managing people in a minute. I think that's an important point. I think a lot of people, whether they're developers, whether they're business people, whether they are project managers, business analysts, whatever, the whole managing people and communicating, I think is really important. But I just want to but before we go into that, I just want to touch base. So you've worked with big corporates, you've worked with startups throughout your career. Which do you prefer?
I actually prefer startups. So I have, just to clarify, even when I worked for big corporates, they were projects which were incubated as startups within a very large corporate environment. So they were actually run as a startup. Yeah. And the exciting part about that is, when you run a project as a startup, you don't have time for bureaucracy or, red tape. Things happen fast and you move fast. You fail fast and you get results fast.
Yeah. And I basically left a company last Friday, and I'm moving to another role next week. But one of the things, sort of the incubator sort of level of ideas, because the feedback I've been given is that it's actually quite successful in these large corporates. They can actually act more like a startup, although the main part of the business obviously has lots of more complexity, let's say. Would you say, does it work well? Or have you got to be very focused on what sort of ideas you're bringing in with that incubator?
It depends on the company culture. So as the companies grow, their culture becomes a little bit sluggish, and that's because of no fault of their own, because, they have so many stakeholders involved and so many processes that they have to comply with to manage such a large corporation. So it really depends on the mindset. If people can actually embrace the ideas, not just give it lip service that, it's an incubated project within a large corporate, but actually embrace the corporate culture that is needed for a startup within that project, and be open towards failure, because startups are not guaranteed. So you can the projects that I worked on, basically it was like an experiment, and they put a little bit of funding towards that, and if we are able to demonstrate that there is a real business case, then they can add a little bit more funding. And as we demonstrate success, it can bloom into a really significant part of the company itself.
Yeah.
A very good example of this is AWS, right? AWS was incubated as like an internal project, and so on and so forth. And right now, AWS is one of the, it's a huge contributor to the bottom line of Amazon.
Yeah, 100% agree. And another one, just to throw in the mix, Google Maps was another one that was an idea that sprung out of their 80-20 principle, or 70-20-10 principle, where they had these other ideas. And as I say, like now, if you don't have a sat nav in your car, you use Google Maps. Lots of people use Google Maps wandering around streets of London and sort of everywhere in the world. So those sort of ideas that get incubated can be very, very successful. So I 100% agree with that. Okay. So tell me about Tetranoodle Technologies. What is it? What's your role? What's the business?
Yeah. So earlier on, when I started my career in Canada, I worked for a company in US as well. This was back in the .com bust, when that happened. So I experienced the .com boom. It was very exciting. And I also experienced the .com bust. And then I worked for a couple of startups in those time frames. And what happened was .com bust happened, and then September 11th happened. So there was a period of a lot of churn, a lot of ups and downs. And what I realized was I did not want to be, I did not want to be in a situation where I give the control of my career and life to somebody else. Similarly, when I started off in my career, when I had to figure out how to get the education that I needed. So I immediately, sort of around, I think 2002, 2003, I went from a permanent employee to a consultant, and I started a consulting company. Back then it was called Spyro Communications, and now recently I renamed it to Tetranoodle. So basically there are 3 or 4 employees in the company, and we provide consulting services and training services to startups or mid-sized companies, anything related to technologies, software, IT, any latest technologies like machine learning, blockchain, and so on.
Okay, so more cutting edge technologies you sort of prioritize and sort of give advice on.
That's right. We do specialize in that. So, we always try to look at the projects which are, more sort of cutting edge. But at the same time, it doesn't have to be anything related to machine learning. As long as it serves the purpose, we also try to, get involved in projects which are solving a real human or business problem for people. It's not just like a social network of, just to kill time, but some real purpose. And those are the projects we like to get involved in.
Awesome. So while we're talking about your business, you're sort of managing people. So what skills did you need to learn to be able to manage people beyond your architect, software engineer. What were the skills you tried to develop, and sort of how successful? Obviously, you were successful in it, but how did you build that into your career?
Yeah, I think two key skills that I had to learn at a human level, they were communication and empathy. So, obviously, when you're an individual contributor, you focus on what you need to deliver and get it out the door and do the best you can. But when you're managing people, or when you're in a team environment, especially if you're responsible for the entire team's delivery, and also the progress and career development of your team members, you have to, first of all, empathize with them and try to understand exactly what their priorities are. And that's where communication comes in. And then you basically need to help them get what they want out of the project as well. So it's not just what are they delivering in terms of their output, their source code, or whatever they're working on. It's also what are they getting back out of this project, right? Mm-hmm. Only then I think true passion comes in, because they see, the team members see that working on this project is not just about earning money. It's also about learning and growing themselves, and that has been a very critical part of how I work with any team.
So you've developed a sort of way of being able to create a vision for teams, whether it's in your consultancy business or whether it's your own business. Your like your dream, your vision is incredibly important for your particular role. Do you agree?
Vision, as in yes, vision is about what we want to deliver, yes. Right? And there are certain quality standards and timelines we need to meet. Yeah. So those things are not negotiable. So we cannot lower the quality. We cannot, timelines are sometimes negotiable, but that depends on the client. But my main priorities are, we are going to deliver this to the client or our customer. So we will all make certain amount of money out of this. But what are we going to get over and above the money part, which is growth, our personal growth, our growth, and that's what I focus on. And the other part is initially when we start off a project, I'm very hands-on. I get involved in a very low-level details. But once kick off and people know exactly what they're doing, I'm kind of very hands-off and just let them do their thing and check in once in a while with them.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I suppose because two of the sort of in technology, the two different ways of managing their business. So the difference between Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. So Bill Gates was very transactional, and he paid his developers a good wage because he wanted good developers, where anyone who worked for Steve Jobs always had the vision to create something different, something new, which part, I think I know which side you're going to jump on, but which side would you lean upon for your business, your consulting, which side would you lean more closely to?
So it's kind of a controversial question, I think. I've read Steve Jobs's biography, and as a person, how he dealt with others is not something that I appreciate.
100% agree.
But yeah, as a visionary, I really appreciate his vision. That being said, I also appreciate Bill Gates's. I don't want to minimize the contribution that Bill Gates has to our industry. At the end of the day, they are both equally. I think they have been equally really. How can I say it? Revolutionary in terms of what they have given to this world. Yeah. And how they used to think is quite different. But yeah, in terms of their management style, I think they got the best out of their people. How they got the best is quite different, right? As you said, Bill Gates was more transactional, and Steve Jobs was more passionate. Although his passion was sometimes, got the best of him. And but everyone has their own personal style.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to put you in an awkward situation, because the Steve Jobs story often a lot of the story gets told of his passion and being able to deliver incredible pieces of kit, technologies which never been seen before. But as you say, that his actual way of going about managing people was actually rather cruel in some circumstances. So I wasn't implying that you were cruel to your employees or anything. I just thought it's an interesting contrast because, as you say, like Bill Gates, the contribution of everyone having a computer was his ambition, and although he conducted his business differently to Steve Jobs, it was a different time, it was a different mindset of how people should act. So I didn't mean to put you into an awkward situation. There was probably no right answer to that, whether you went one side or the other. Anyway, so you've had a keen interest in blockchain. So it's an incredibly difficult, complicated area of technology. So I've spent a bit of time doing a bit of research to understand it, because I genuinely think it's one of those bits of technology which could actually really change the way, even from the way of elections, up to transactions and contracts and lots of different areas. Just unpack it for me, sort of blockchain, and particularly the difference between Bitcoin, and because everyone who doesn't really know a lot about it just thinks Bitcoin's blockchain and blockchain's Bitcoin, which it isn't. But just try and unpack that for me, please.
Sure. All right. So let's talk about how humans transact with each other. As we started, we came up with the barter system, and we said, okay, I'll give you a grain of a bowl of rice, and you give me some services and whatnot. So it was very simple transactions, and people were able to trust each other, and those transactions were synchronous, meaning as soon as you and we exchange goods, the transaction was over. But as the world grew more complex, the distrust, the transactions became more complex, and the distrust set in, where I was not sure if I gave you something, a payment or money or whatever, I will get the goods or services that I ordered. So this type of distrust created a problem where international trade or even domestic trade became difficult, and in order to facilitate that, we had to come up with these third-party higher authorities like banks and the government offices and all that, escrow systems, which could sort of oversee the transactions and make sure that you and we don't, like, if we are to enter into a transaction, that we don't cheat each other. So you promise something, and I promise to give some value back to you. That value, that transaction actually completes. So this creates a lot of friction, a lot of inefficiencies, because now if I have to buy something from you, I'm in Canada, you are in UK, we have to go to a third-party bank, and I will need to deposit my money into the bank, and then the bank will release it to you when I can prove to the bank that, okay, you have delivered the goods or services to me. So this creates a lot of friction, and obviously the bank takes a fee. So blockchain, what it does is it gets rid of all this distrust, yet it creates a system where we can easily trust each other without a third-party higher authority. Yeah. So we can get into a transaction. We can say, okay, I'm going to put my data on blockchain, and nobody will be able to alter it. So mutual trust and indestructible and data, immutability of data, these are the two main advantages that blockchain provides. And it facilitates these kind of use cases where, things like election results, land registries, international trade, and all these type of transactions are possible without a third party getting involved. And when this happens, you can imagine, when third parties are not involved, we can come up with our personal networks or anonymous networks where we can start to transact with each other without revealing our identity as well. So it also, adds an advantage of security and privacy. So that sort of that's sort of the gist of blockchain. Now, Bitcoin is just another system built on blockchain, and what that system is providing is a financial transaction system where you and I, we can enter into a transaction. I can spend some Bitcoins, and you can sell some services or goods. That does not mean that blockchain cannot be used for other use cases. Bitcoin is just one currency that has been implemented because of the characteristics and advantages that blockchain provides.
And would you agree in my assessment that Bitcoin at the moment is speculated rather than investing at the moment?
That's right. So, it is a good proof of concept, and it is an unregulated currency. And I have some background in financial markets, and I follow them quite closely. And if you go back in time and look at the entire human history, financial systems are very sensitive because they affect how we work and how we live, and also they affect how at a global scale countries and governments they operate. So any unregulated financial system, I do not believe will last long until and unless we see some regulation coming in from the international governments and some way to figure out how do we regulate them, how do we make sure they are not misused or they are not misused for bad purposes. I think it's just speculation. Once these things are in place and we see some regulation in place and some support and affirmation from the government that these things are legal, I think that time it will be a good investment. But right now, I do not think it's a good investment. I think it's just speculation.
So at the moment, my brain is going in two different directions. I've got two things I want to follow up from that comment. I'll come back to investing, your idea about investing, saving, which I know you've got a particular sort of methodology and the way you approach it. I just want to tap back in a little bit into blockchain and Bitcoin. So it has a bit of a bad reputation that like money laundering, or it's easier to money launder. It's easier for whether it's evil states manipulating blockchain, etc. Where do you think that is that because it's a mutual trust, and if someone is not a good person, they can manipulate that mutual trust that you've got? Why is there such a bad reputation from a sort of a perception of blockchain and Bitcoin?
Well, it goes back to our earlier discussion we were having, right? As humans, we are very pessimistic, and
Yes.
And any news item that is negative, it gets shared, exponentially more times than something that's positive. So when Bitcoin started, in the early days, it was used to trade, illegal things like drugs and all that. But that's just a small part of what Bitcoin is, right? 95% of the Bitcoin is used either for investment purposes or for legal purposes, like any other currency. Like even when we look at US dollars, only a fraction of that currency is used for legal purposes, but the rest is used for legal and useful purposes. But with Bitcoin, obviously it's a new thing and people want to talk about it, and in the media, when a negative story comes about, it sort of spreads like wildfire. And so that reputation is nothing else but just this negative hype about Bitcoin or any other currency, cryptocurrency.
I totally agree. The media, whatever form it comes in, if it's wanting to get clicks or wanting to sell papers, whatever it is, a bad story always trumps something. I don't mean using the word Trump, but always trumps a good story. You don't see good stories that often in a paper or on the website. So I 100% agree with that. Thank you for clarifying that. So I wanted to touch base about saving and investing. I know you said to me before we came on here that you had a an experience about investing and saving. So what would you say lessons you've learned, and any advice you could give anyone that's looking to save more money or invest more money?
Yeah. I had an interesting experience. In 2008, I had some savings put in a very conservative investment, and I lost pretty much half of it, and that was a significant amount of my savings. I did not know anything about investing, and I was always taught from my childhood, this is a very speculative market. Do not even think about investing in it. But then when it happened, I basically forced myself to learn about it and understand it. And now I understand it quite well after 10 years of research and all that. Basically, all I can say is it's a financial industry has been quite, I'm trying to find a good word to describe it. Like, they have been cheeky in the sense that they spread a lot of misinformation, or they tend to hide a lot of useful information from general public, and they basically just make it sound like it's a very complex thing that you don't want to manage your own money, just give it to care of it. So that kind of vibe you get when you talk to financial advisors and whatnot, and definitely don't want to offend anybody listening who are in that profession, but that's the experience I got. So at the end of the day, the simple lessons are: the stock market is a very good investment if you can understand it. Companies who do well, whose stock prices rise, they tend to build a lot of useful products and services. It's all about earnings and growth. So if you want to invest in a company, look at their earnings. Is it earning positive? For every dollar they are investing, is it earning more than $1? And what is their growth trajectory looks like? Meaning, are they going to continuously earn the same amount year over year, or see growth? For example, today they are earning $1. In the next year, will they earn $2, $3? And all this data is readily available, and you just need to sort of learn about it. And if it's too complicated for you, a very simple way of doing this is just buy index funds. So index funds are basically funds which follow certain stock market indexes. So in North America, the S&P 500. And the last part I will say is, make sure you understand that you do not pay any fee. So index funds, like mutual funds, they have heavy fee. Like, typically they'll charge you 2 or 3% annual fee, and that's a huge chunk of your money, which will hamper the growth of your capital. So look at very low fee alternatives for investing. And if you're an adventurous person and you want to learn more about it, look at buying individual companies. Do not buy more than 10 stocks in your portfolio. Have exit strategies on each of your positions, meaning don't buy a company and stick with it. Like, don't follow the Warren Buffett model. It doesn't work anymore. So have an exit strategy that, if you lose 10% on this stock, or if you make 25% on this stock, you will exit. So have these type of exit strategies. I'm giving you, a lot of information in a very short period of time, so it may confuse you. So, to summarize it, like, if you want to be adventurous, invest with a systematic approach, not just follow tips from friends and family. So come up with a, and if you want a very, very simple investing strategy, just buy low cost and low commission index funds.
Okay, so just more on that. So a book I read a little while ago by Tony Robbins, Unshakable, talked a lot about breaking down how to invest. And one of the things that he said was those index funds on each currency is a very sensible to say. There's low admin charges. And invariably, let's just take the US as an example, because he used the example. The US stock exchange is going to win long term, and therefore it's a clever way of being able just to invest on a long-term basis. So 100% agree with that. I think that's a really good tip for anyone who doesn't have a lot of experience in investing and just wants to start putting some money away. The other thing, it sort of carries on, it is a Warren Buffett quote, but I know you said that his mindset doesn't always work now, but the Warren Buffett way of if you're not a full-time investor and that's not your primary job, invest in an index and then get on with your job and leave it to compound and grow and grow and grow. So I think there's lots of, I 100% agree. When you watch the TV or you read the newspapers or the websites about investing, they make it incredibly complicated because they have, and I might be controversial here, they have an investment for their services, so they want it to sound complicated, so you don't do it yourself. But I agree with everything you said there. Just to break down the section on exit strategies and agreeing. So you would say if you bought a company that you think is less than it should, or could be less than it potentially has, and I won't name any names, but just say you invest in company A and you think they are undervalued, and so you put in X amount of £1,000, £100, whatever, £10,000, whatever it is, into that company, and you buy stocks for that individual company. So maybe you hold on to it for a year, and it goes up, and you think, right, I've got it sorted. This company's going to be a long growth company, but something happens within that industry that's outside of the companies, and it drops 10-15% away below what you bought it as. So it's basically gone up and down. You would say, even though you thought at that time that it was a good long-term investment, you would consider selling at a loss just to get out of whether it's a volatile market or industry.
That's right. So, everybody has their own investment philosophies. My philosophy is that I do not know what is going to happen in the future. I do not know, and I cannot be 100% sure my investment decision today is going to pay in the long term. So when I say long term, I do not know what long term means. I let the market dictate that. Yeah. So for example, my exit strategies are, if I incur a 20% trailing loss on any position, then I exit. So trailing losses, if you are into investment, it means as the stock price rises, you raise the stop price, 20% below the highest point that it reached. And I also exit on, let's say if I make 50% profit on a position, I exit. Because what happens is as the stock prices rise, they tend to get sluggish. Like, any marathon runner can only run so far. And after a while, they start to pace down, right? Yeah. So what happens is, if you have made a decent amount of money in that company, that means the future growth will be a little bit sluggish. So it's a wise way to take out your money and put it in another sprint runner, because it will grow much faster, because there are other options available who are growing faster. So why will you get married to a position which may not give you the right amount of return in a short period of time? Instead, you can take out that money and put it in a better company at that time.
That's a really so. I think what we're, from what I've taken from what you said, there is multiple approaches to investing. As you said, the Warren Buffett way of sticking on to something for 20 years might not be necessarily the best course as markets have evolved and markets have changed, which is really interesting. I think that's a really interesting point. Equally, getting out is actually good, and so it sounds like you're constantly sort of reevaluating your stocks and what you have. So that's equally as interesting. So for example, I was doing a bit of research. I have a couple of investments, ISAs, which I've taken a couple of decisions on recently to change one of the funds. So one of them, I was reading about the top in UK, I'm saying, the top investors that have beaten the market over the last 10, 15 years. And there was one of the people when I was reading about was saying that they're contrarian and they look against the market. When things are good, they look for the downside and how to approach it. And when it's bad, they look at the positives. What's your sort of feeling on that sort of, because it was very attractive to me, because I didn't end up choosing that investor because I didn't feel bold enough to go purely on a contrarian basis. But often the best times to make money is when you're in a recession, and that's when everything is undervalued.
Completely agree. So contrarian views are consistent. So, even if you look at Warren Buffett's value-based investing, he says, buy the companies when they're cheaper, meaning people are selling it, or, they are afraid it's going down. So as long as you can figure out, okay, this company is making money and they're going to grow. If there is a negative sentiment, that's the right time to buy. And it also aligns with what I said earlier, when you have made a very decent amount of profit on a company, that means it's riding high and people are getting really excited about that company. But that's the right time to exit because smart investors, or how can I say it, smart money, like big money, institutional investors, they act opposite to what the public actions are. So when they're buying, public is generally selling, and vice versa. Wow. So this you can see in the news. If you see a news item in the financial news that recession is coming, that generally means it's going to be a good stock market in the future.
Yeah.
And the reverse is true, because there are underlying theories about it. And in short, what happens is big money has to buy a lot of stocks, buy and sell a lot of stocks. They cannot do it profitably if they just do it in one shot. So they have to do it over time slowly. And in order to generate that much, let's say if they need to buy, they need to incentivize the public to sell their stock.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's very difficult for them to buy that much stock, and vice versa. So that's why all these stories come up, and it's not it's not a conspiracy. It's just human nature how these stories tend to get noticed at the wrong by the public, and the smart investors, they know, okay, I'm reading this because of this is what's going to happen in the future. So
is there any books that you would suggest would be interesting for people to read on investing?
I think Warren Buffett's value investing, and there is O'Neill's Investor Business Daily. Investor Business Daily is a website and it's a newspaper. And his that was started by a guy named O'Neill. I forget the name. He has written some really good books on stock market. So have a read at that. And I have some good recommendations. Why don't I email it to you?
Yeah, of course. We'll put it in the show notes. Email them over to me, and we'll put them in the show notes.
Yeah.
For me, Warren Buffett was very, very good. As I said, the more recent one is this Tony Robbins Unshakable. I think that's really, really powerful, and it breaks down. For me, it broke down a lot of the myths that are around investing that most people believe, i.e. recession bad, good times are amazing, and actually is actually the opposite if you want to invest. So I would advise that Unshakable by Tony Robbins. So moving on from that, thank you for about investing. I find that fascinating. So you do some volunteering. So is it the Vancouver Vector Vest user group? Is it?
Yeah. So Vector Vest is an investing program that you can use to learn and invest. And I became a user back in 2009. And what I found was, it was a research tool that I was using.
Right.
And using that tool, I built my own systems, using my background in software and all that. And what I found was a lot of people were confused about it and did not know how to use it. So in Vancouver, where I live, there is a user group. And I used to attend a couple of meetings, and I made a few presentations, and next thing I knew, they made me the group leader. So I was sort of, in charge of running the group and sharing information with the investors. And it was fascinating. There were chartered accountants, there were doctors, there were, wealthy people. These people have been investing for years, and they had capital to invest, and still found their knowledge very, very basic. And that was quite interesting to me. And that's the reason why, I was really motivated to share whatever I had learned over time. And I read it for about a couple of years. It was very interesting to share the information, learn from few users. But then quite some unfortunate things start to happen where, I invited a guest to speak, and he was, they started taking advantage of their lack of knowledge and started pushing some products and services which were of dubious in nature, which happens everywhere in this financial industry, right? Mm-hmm. I came to the conclusion that I do not want to be involved in something like that where people start to lose money. The intention was basically to share information freely, and that down at that time.
Okay, awesome. So just starting to wrap up, thank you very much for your contribution today. So what do you still want to do? What do you still want to achieve in your career and business?
Well, personally, I want to achieve, I have found, my passion, which is travel and personal development. So I want to figure out a way how I can incorporate those passions into my work. Overall, I just want to help other people at this time to achieve their goals, because when I look back, I had a very, hard time getting to where I am today, trying to figure things out on my own. So my passion is also to share my experience and knowledge with others who may be at a certain stage in their career and they don't know how to go to the next step. Somebody may be looking to, get their next promotion in their job, or learn a new technology, or launch a new startup. So all these things I've done over time, and I know what works, what doesn't work. So my passion is also sharing that information. This is what we are doing today as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So are you expecting speaking events? Are you going around to schools or to universities? Where are you sort of sharing your knowledge?
Well, right now, the more there are two things which I'm doing right now. We train engineers on all the cutting edge technology. So we do that through self-paced, video-based courses, live training, instructor-led training. So all those types of training we provide. And for the startups, we have mentorship programs and consulting services where we help founders or startup entrepreneurs figure out what they want to do, how to get there quickly, efficiently, on the right within the right timeline and the right budgets.
Awesome. Thank you. So where can people find you if they want to reach out to you, ask you a question, or just maybe like link in with you and your knowledge? Where can they find you?
Sure. So you can email me directly, manuj@tetranoodle.com. My website is tetranoodle.com, and connect with me on LinkedIn and other social media networks on Facebook. I will send you a few links that you can probably add to the show notes, and it should be easy enough to find me.
That's awesome. Thank you, Manuj, so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I'm sure it's been incredibly interesting to hear the sort of the variety of your career from technology to invest into personal development. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. So just to sign off, thank you everyone for listening. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast. You can find me on Twitter and on Instagram, Mark J. Hayward. Also, you can check me out on Patreon. I've just testing out Patreon to see if it's worth investing my time into. So please check that out. There's different tiers that you can join me, and you get various benefits and sort of special offers from there. Also, podcast, you can find it on all your best podcast hosting, and also you'll find it on YouTube as well. So thank you very much, Manju, and we'll speak again soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.